Commercial real estate is changing, and Yardy has the right technology to power your strategy. Turn vacancy back into revenue with Yardy Cube, the award-winning solution that helps build a thriving co-working community. Improve energy operations with Yardy Pulse, the energy performance platform that helps you operate your buildings from anywhere. Drive asset performance with Yardy Elevate, the technology suite that connects every aspect of real estate operations. Yardy, energized for tomorrow.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Realcomm Live. I got to tell you, these conversations just keep getting more exciting, more interesting, more fun. And what's really ironic is we're reaching out to relationships and technologies that we've been talking to about for 15 plus years. We're going to continue on the theme of back to work, flexible, flex space, hybrid workplaces, immersive experiences. And I keep going back to that conversation I had with Peter Miskovich a couple weeks back, saying, to get people back into the office, you better make it worth the 2-hour commute. And, that's been kind of a thought of mine for a long time. Am I going to just drive, or drive 2 hours in and back to the office to sit in a cube, to be on a phone and on my computer? And I think the answer is no. So along that theme, we have got a phenomenal guest today. Adrian Velicescu, I've known for 15 plus years. I think the first time we had him at Realcomm was in the Middle East. And then since then, he'd been at every one of our conferences. It's been his graphics that you've been seeing in the general session, conversations about LED walls, bringing the outside into buildings. And again, we've been having this conversation for quite a few years. And he is doing some things in Los Angeles and around the world that are just absolutely at the cutting edge. And I am proud and honored to call him a friend. And I am so grateful to have him here today to talk about what he's doing as it relates to buildings, the built environment, immersive experiences. And hold on, you're going to see some things you probably have not seen. So with that, let's bring in Adrian and begin our conversation. Hello, sir. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Good. And it's so I can tell you're in LA. So it's we were talking earlier about your travels around the world, and it's good to see that you're in your home base. And unfortunately, you're sitting in the office that I want, and I'm going to have soon. And I've been in some of the biggest, the offices of some of the biggest CEOs in the country, and I will tell you, you've got the coolest office, hands down, of any of them.
Thank you.
I'll take the Fortune 10. And I bet you've got a better office than most of those folks. So,
hey, that's the only way to, get your people to come see you occasionally. Otherwise, everybody wants to be at home now in their pajamas.
So, Ian, why don't you take me into the corner so we can see? Perfect. So what we're looking at is Adrian sitting in his office in Los Angeles. And Adrian, that's a perfect segue. What's your background? Tell us your story so everybody can relate to how you got to where you are today.
So 20 years ago, I was just a guy making movies and commercials. And, we were actually making a lot of money because record labels would spend at least $2-3 million on a music video. And technology advanced, cameras got cheaper, and internet was born. And all of a sudden that kind of stopped, the budgets got slashed.
Interesting.
And it was about 2000 when I was kind of looking around, and I saw most of my colleagues going back to the small screen, to making movies for stamps on a computer. And I always had this idea that, bigger is better. That, people would really relate to an experience that's more immersive, where, you could share the same visual canvas amongst a lot of people, as opposed to one-to-one relationship. So I was dreaming about creating this media channels, these platforms in large public settings. And I guess the only problem was that technology was expensive at the time.
Yeah.
And in order to make it work, I had to find some way of making a business out of it, where developers and clients would actually see the benefit of it and actually pay for it.
Now, you originally, some of the early days, I remember, and we had you in Realcomm, promoting to a lot of the owners and operators coming to our events, but you hit a little resistance and headed out to where they were listening a little bit more, Asia and the Middle East. Can you share a little bit of that journey with us?
Sure. As much as I wanted to start doing this in the States, it was nearly impossible to convince people to spend the kinds of money that we're talking about to implement a technology that was crude and new at the time. So for whatever reason, I had a very good audience in Middle East. I'm going to share with you some. This was my first job in Macau, and basically the client had here 4 hotels. They wanted to connect them together under one single media platform that was driven from one computer or one play system, and nobody in the world could do it. So I think I was lucky enough that I had the background of filmmaking. I understood enough of the technology. I went to school and went to film school, but I studied cinematography. So I had a pretty good understanding of the engineering as well as the creative part of it.
But this is where your world meets my world. To accomplish that, you needed some pretty sophisticated networking. You needed to understand, IP protocols. I remember coming to your office and you were designing screens where every pixel, was addressable. I mean, you got pretty technical pretty quick.
Well, not only that, this was 2008, and we were, the challenge was to drive pixels that were 2 miles away with a speed of 30 frames per second.
Wow.
So there is no lag in between. And we certainly had to do a lot of research. I was fortunate enough to have friends smarter than me that were in the film business with me, and I brought them along. It took us about 2 years to figure it out. But once we had the technology, we could pretty much do anything that had to do with display technology integrated in buildings, because once you understand that networking and solve that problem, everything is a lot simpler.
I think you have another project you wanted to show. There you go. Yeah.
So this is our second largest project, and it's actually in Jakarta this time. This is 2011. So here, you have a developer that has built a mall in the 80s. And, by 2005 or by 2010, when we met him, the mall was pretty old looking. And it so happened that a brand new mall got built next door, and he was losing, tenants like crazy. So he hired us to design something that would bring his clientele back, and he wasn't even considering, the business model where he could actually monetize this. So this is how we started designing. This is the largest screen in the world.
Really?
About 1,400 feet long. It wraps around 2 city blocks. It could be seen from 10 miles away. And we launched it with, the artwork of 50 artists from around the world. It made a lot of noise. Within 6 months, everybody was back in his mall, and
That's the business case, right? Forget
Yeah.
the technology.
That's
It's
right.
a tool. It's a tool. That's all it is.
That's right. So fast forward, it took us, although the business started in 2005 or so, it took us almost 10 years to get our first break in the United States. And
Which, by the way, we'll talk about that in the second segment because that's an important topic.
The way we were managed to do it, the industry of outdoor signage was pretty developed, but it worked on very old ideas. And we came to market and said, look, who wants a TV on a stick in front of a building? And if you had something that was slightly different, more integrated, first of all, it would be noticed. But secondly, what matters is what you put on that screen. And I don't know of any any media channels that show advertising after advertising. You have to give the audience something they need, and you have to commit to doing so in the long term. It's not just, hey, here's something cool, and then I'm going to switch to advertising for this time. So we created this model, where we said, hey, these are media channels. These are media platforms. They're not billboards. And as such, they have a certain amount of time where you're really showing cool art and interesting content.
Right.
And
I
then
want to move us along because we got so much to cover. Can you show us the other LA project, and then let's jump right into the studio conversation?
here's the second one.
Yeah.
Similar model. It became the highest revenue sign within a few months on its launch, and it still has some of the largest contracts for outdoor signage in the United States.
Stunning. I've seen that one personally. Absolutely stunning.
Yep.
So studios. Now all of a sudden you're moving. Oh, actually, let's have this quick conversation.
So, we did move inside the developments a long time ago, and the premise was that, you need to change the viewer experience, the tenant experience inside and outside in order to be successful. Yep. This ties into your point of, how do you get people excited to going to the workplace?
Yep.
Visual media is interesting because it really offers immediate access to culture. Culture is whatever you make of it, whatever you want to do with it. So here's a vehicle that, it's expensive to begin with, but the value in the long term that it provides, it's hard to compare with anything.
Yeah, we've been having these conversations. Like I said, we're kind of on a theme of return to work and hybrid office and immersive experience. And the industry seems like it's struggling a little bit to understand at both the tenant side and the landlord side, what does that experience feel like when you get into the office, right? And I think you're doing some of the most cutting edge work out there. Before we take a quick commercial break, let's jump into Studio One. Give us a little history of your studio, and then after the break, we'll talk Studio 2 in the NFT gallery.
So during the pandemic, we were struggling like everybody else in terms of figuring out how to still communicate with clients, and most importantly, how our clients could communicate with with theirs. So we had requests first from a number of musicians that all of a sudden lost all their live gigs, and they came along and said, hey, do you guys have any way of streaming this and doing a virtual show? We happen to have the technology. We put together the streaming capability and live cameras, and all of a sudden,
Well, we know that well because we were right there with you. I mean, Realcomm was the only organization putting on live events in 2020, middle of the pandemic, and we took you up on that studio. In fact, sat in that exact room over your shoulder and produced a 30-person in building event, and I think we brought in another 30 to 40 from the outside world.
Yep.
One of the proudest things I've done in my entire career was we put on 2 or 3 hybrid events in the middle of that pandemic. But guess what? We turned pain and fear into new opportunities and so much experience. I mean, we can't unlearn what you taught us and what we learned together putting that event on. Yep.
Very good.
Yep.
Well, the multi-use aspect of it was the fascinating thing. I mean, soon after, we got into using this for musicians and corporate events. We got in and using it for galleries and this type of multi-use is kind of telling you that if you had one of this in every development A-class buildings, they will find a good use to it.
It will create energy. Let's hold that thought, take a brief break, come back, and then we're going to talk about the new studio on Melrose, the NFT gallery, and if we have time, a couple questions about what the real estate community needs to understand and embrace this idea.
Create a workplace that employees love with Appspace. Appspace is the only unified platform that simplifies employee communications and helps you manage your workplace. The modern workplace has changed. Employees want flexible work arrangements, which can create challenges for productivity, company culture, and your technology needs. The Appspace platform combines digital signage, space reservation, an employee app, kiosks, visitor management, and content to help solve these challenges and build a successful hybrid workplace. Use Appspace anywhere, easily integrating with your everyday tools. Appspace helps you reach employees, keeping them engaged and improving productivity. Using the same app, your team can book rooms, desks, and resources while you manage everything in one place. Companies all over the world trust Appspace to help them create workplaces their employees love. Try for free at appspace.com.
All right, Adrian, take us to your most recent project, studio number 2 on Melrose in Los Angeles.
So this was born out of the necessity to address a client's need for designing the future of retail. They're very familiar with our model of monetizing signage with art and entertainment. But at the same time, they had a bunch of commercial space, that they didn't know what to do with because, it's hard to lease commercial space these days. So we're basically asking the same question: is like, hey, what's the future of retail space? What does this look in the future? Because I just don't see companies doing 10-year leases and spending millions of dollars on TIs when the world is changing so fast. The technology is changing so fast. So our response was a product called SV Spaces, which is basically a combination of some sort of digital display with lighting on the exterior, and then, because most commercials have visibility to, the space inside, build an immersive, very large virtual space inside, like a virtual stage, not unlike the one we just showed earlier on our stage. But this time is connected with a sign outside, is available to a brand to use for a pop-up, product launch, events, and then next door to it, we built a, Next door to it, we built a NFT space, an NFT gallery. Since we've seen the demand of brands wanting to get involved in the NFT world, wanted to use their assets. So basically, the space is split in
So
two.
yeah, so let's break this down. You've got insanely high resolution LED panels, sub one, I think is what you said. So the resolution is incredible. You can put it in various shapes and sizes. And this is a place for that very confusing idea of NFTs to actually be displayed on a wall in a public space, not in a metaverse, but in a room. So we're going to have you back to just break down NFTs, but you're doing it.
So, the interesting thing about, to your point, the understanding of a digital artwork up to our proposal was that, hey, it's something that exists on your phone and you have it in a wallet, and you're proud to be an owner of it. That's your contract for owning a piece of artwork. And as we were looking at the space, we kind of scratched our head and said, wait a minute, why would anyone spend so much money on digital artwork if no one else could see it? So we basically created a product called Luma Canvas, which is a high-end, larger color space, higher resolution, three-dimensional product that is kind of museum grade, where artists could feel comfortable to display their artwork. And we created the first the first physical NFT gallery.
Is this the first one in the country?
This is the first one in the country. We launched it about a year ago at the LA Art Show, and then we moved into
Has anybody else anywhere in the world done this yet?
Not to our knowledge. There are attempts to create museums, NFT museums. We've been approached by people in Europe.
Singapore had an interesting digital museum across from the Marina Bay Sands, not in the same ballpark, but not the same game, so to speak.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, we could talk for hours. You got so much cool stuff to show us, but we're going to run out of time. Two questions. Why is this important to people who own malls, office buildings, mixed-use projects, anybody with a building that wants to give people a reason to come back? Why is it important to them?
I could tell you that if you don't change the way you do business, and if you don't apply what we know about the young generation, their habits, their day-to-day approach. I mean, we've learned that the attention span is lower. We learned that they need technology to kind of be around and communicate. We've got to change with the generation.
Right.
We've got to understand the new way of communicating and looking at things. And, people want to experience technology and want to experience culture. And if you're just trying to sell me soap all day long, I'm just going to get bored and walk away from that, and never look back.
You bring up a real interesting point, is this generational issue. A lot of the folks in the real estate industry are our age, right, in our age group, but they've lived in a world of physical space for so long, and they're afraid, I think, of the digital space because it's so new. You and I have lived in both spaces for almost our entire career, so it's easier. What's the single 30-second advice you'd give to somebody in the built environment? You're in an elevator, you got 30 seconds. What do you say?
Look, I mean, the old models have to change. If one wants to be successful, you have to reanalyze the way, you do business and you sell real estate. And it's clear that developers need revenue models, new revenue models. You know, we've been at the forefront of inventing a few of them. I'm sure there are other people in the space that participate and help change the dynamics of that relationship. But the most important thing is to keep inspiring your audience. You know, if you do manage to create a culture of inspiring them, they'll always come back.
I agree. Unfortunately, we're out of time. I mean, I want to have you back because there's so many of these topics that I want to go deeper on. But hopefully we can get you to Orlando in June, because we're reassembling again, getting back on our normal June cadence. Going to have a great time at the Orlando Convention Center. Literally going to be bringing in some of these technologies that you and I have been talking about today, not just to talk about them, but to see them, feel them, touch them, experience them. We're going to have Realcomm Live back again, our studio on our exhibit floor. So hopefully we can get you there one way or the other, either in person or virtually, and if that's the case. But thank you so much for coming on today. And thanks for being a friend and allowing me to follow you on your great journey over the last 15 plus years.
Always great to be back with friends. Thank you, Jim.
All right. Have a great day. Be well.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, I'll tell you, one of the things I love about what's going on in the last probably 6 months of Realcomm Live is that there's so many new ideas and everything, but we're reaching out to folks who've been at this for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And their ideas were brilliant 20 years ago, and now the rest of the world's catching up. So it's just always a pleasure to have people like Adrian on and showing us the future. All right, let's bring in Howard. Howard, I took a couple more minutes from your news. I apologize, but why don't you? It was hard. I could have gone on for.
Oh, I know. With Adrian, that's a tough one. Yeah. Well, thanks, Jim. I mean, Adrian, it was so good having him. And watching Standard, I mirror your feeling too. Watching StandardVision evolve over the past 15 years has not just been exciting, it's been an adventure. Having someone like Adrian in our midst has really been a blessing. So Adrian, thank you for joining us today. So I'm going to go right into the news, a couple of key articles from our weekly briefing that goes out every Thursday morning. So this week's lead article is actually from Jim himself. Now you've all heard of the Great Resignation. It's that pandemic-induced shift in the labor market that we've been experiencing over the past 2 years. Now, this week's lead article is entitled The Great Reconfiguration, capital RE. We were also seeing a shift, but in migration patterns, urban design, family dynamics, transportation, organizational structure, entertainment, education, health services, and so on. And this is having a massive societal impact that's going to inevitably change the way we use buildings. This combined effective distributed mobile workforces, you get cloud-based business enterprise solutions, smart buildings, integrated immersive experiences like we just saw, are going to require a well-defined blend of physical space and technology. So this idea of the Great Reconfiguration is actually our theme for the June 2022 conference in Orlando. And we're going to be diving in and exploring some of the immense opportunities that are going to be emerging for our industry. So it's a thought-provoking read. Next, I want to shout out to this week's tech partner, Facilio, for their article entitled 2022 O&M Tech Resolutions for Operations Professionals. And the main message here is that if you haven't already, 2022 should probably be the year that you wrap your arms around operations and maintenance and start corralling all the data from your siloed systems, software buildings in your portfolio into a single pane of glass. Now, we're talking about a modern CMMS, a computerized maintenance management system. And that's going to not only give you greater visibility into your portfolio's performance, but also better control and actionable insights. Plus, probably the best features, you're going to be able to automate workflows from work order all the way to completion. Now, that's Facilio's message and exactly what they're bringing to the industry since 2017. Good article. Also, now Yardy has just introduced their newly launched Elevate Revenue. It's an end-to-end system of asset management solutions, and they do this by integrating the Edge Marketing, Deal Manager, Commission Track, Legal module, which is their dynamic lease generation, and Edge Research that gives you access to a database of 14 million properties, 1.3 million owners, and over 840,000 tenants into an integrated solution. One other thing on this, I have a correction to make. In last week's briefing, one of our featured articles incorrectly identified this offering as elevate income instead of elevate revenue. So we apologize for the error with any confusion it may have caused. Finally, and I think this is the big one. We've been following closely how China's rise to power is going to be impacting global geopolitics and directly challenging, I think, our democratic way of life. So Made in Beijing, the plan for global market domination, and this is a 32-minute YouTube video. It's presented by the FBI's Office of the Private Sector, Counterintelligence and Training. And in the world of global adversaries, the People's Republic of China, probably numero uno with their sustained brazen campaign of industrial espionage. Now, the PRC poses the greatest single threat to our freedom, national security, and economic vitality. And this Made in Beijing video by the FBI, it just came out this week. It sounds the alarm so that the private sector starts recognizing the urgent need to protect their crown jewels against industrial espionage. So everyone, you need to watch this, understand how these attack vectors may directly impact you and your organizations. So with that's
Howard,
it.
you knocked it out of the park again. And let me comment on two of the articles that you referenced. The one, yes, I wrote, I think it's a good article, not because I wrote it, but it comes from 25 to 30 years of observing our industry, how technology impacts built environment. And let's just be real clear. The great reconfiguration is not just about building reconfiguration, an office to an apartment building or a mall to a digital event center like Adrian's talking about. It's a reconfiguration of lives, of business practices, of habits. And we've been feeling this for 15 years, Amazon and WeWork and all these new ideas playing at the edges. It's here to stay. And at least in our opinion, and that's the reason we wrote this article. That's why we're designating as our theme. And I would encourage everybody to read it, kind of get an idea of what we're planning in June. Second article is the China Tech FBI article. We've been having these conversations in earnest since 2019 and even before. And a lot of times people said, well, don't be paranoid or don't be afraid. And I had access to information that put me in a pretty good place to understand what was really going on, but had to be careful on how we presented the information. Mm-hmm. Well, now that the FBI, our FBI, is saying the same thing we've been saying for a number of years, that we have a very big competitor in our hands. And there's another good article that I'd encourage everybody to Google, research, is the bifurcation by Eric Schmidt, the great technical bifurcation, meaning a Western internet and an Eastern internet. And this comes from the former chairman and CEO of Google. And so we're not going to overreact like we never do, but we're going to take it serious and we're going to understand what implications it has to all those people trying to figure out how technology plays out in the real estate industry. So great job on those articles, not mine, but the other ones. As always, you did a great job with the news. Thanks.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay. Have a great weekend.
You too.
All right. So much going on. Let's take our final break and I'll come back and give you an idea of what we're going to be talking about next week.
Commercial real estate investment is complex and difficult to manage. Dealpath makes it easy to focus on what matters. You can easily share documents with internal and external partners, with customizable access settings so people only see what's appropriate. Dealpath organizes all your deal information, files, and communications in one place. Dealpath's powerful reporting tools allow you to quickly analyze deals across your pipeline, so you can mitigate risks and execute flawlessly. Dealpath. This is smart deal management.
All right. Next week, we're going to return to a conversation we had almost 1 year ago today. We are going to bring back Ben Tranell, Senior Design Project Manager from Gensler. Actually was the gentleman who got me on top of the Shanghai Tower as he was the project manager for that building in Shanghai. And then Hans Neubert, who's in charge of the digital innovation strategy side of Gensler, an architectural design firm. He is responsible for everything digital. And what we're going to do is we're going to revisit the conversation we had 1 year ago about the hybrid workplace. What does that mean? What did we learn? What do they see? They have some of the biggest projects in the world under their guidance right now. And it's going to be a great conversation to see what's happening at the front of the line on the workplace, the hybrid workplace. And then we're going to kind of tie what we talked about with Adrian today into that conversation. And we're probably going to bring in the conversations we had with Peter Miskovich a few weeks back. It's moving fast. We're going to the best experts in the world, and it's going to be a great episode. So please join us next week. Gensler, hybrid workplace 1 year later. You all have a great day, great weekend. Be well, and we'll see you next Friday.